Dear listeners of the Female Guys Requested podcast, happy Wednesday. I'm your host, Ting Ting, from sunny and soon-to-be-hot Las Vegas. Today, our guest is another Vegas local, Irene Yee, the famed Lady Lockoff on Instagram. Irene is a professional West Coast-based rock climbing and adventure photographer. She started rock climbing out of pure joy, picked up a camera soon after, and continues that journey on her Instagram at Lady Lockoff. Her focus is to uplift women, BIPOC, and the LGBTQIA2S+ communities, choosing to highlight those pushing their own personal limits and finding inspiration in those with passion over muscle. She is internationally published, a National Geographic Adventure contributor, and works with today's largest outdoor brands and nonprofits. I had so much joy chatting with Irene in her house. We talked about how she transformed herself from a shy figure hidden in dark clothes to a bold, assertive, yet inclusive personality. I learned how she first took photos as a hobby and then slowly but surely turned creative photography into her profession when she identified the community needed her visual work. After we covered the serious topics, we had a fun time sharing about what else there is to do in Las Vegas besides climbing. That's right, Vegas has more to offer. Now, let's have fun with Irene Yee, the Lady Lockoff. Hi, Irene.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being on my show, the Female Guys Requested podcast. And I think most people know you as your Instagram handle, Lady Lockoff. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Do you prefer people call you Lady Lockoff, or Irene is totally fine?
I think if you don't know somebody and you interact with them mostly on social media, I mean, it's totally fine for people to refer to me as Lady Lockoff or like introduce themselves like that. Like that's not bothersome to me, you know, like you get to pick your handle and I got to pick one that I really enjoy. So that's totally fine. But I always remind them what my name is so they remember to take it offline to be like, now we're a human being to human being and I have a name. And like, you don't need to call me by that, but I just want to remind you that too.
Awesome. Yeah. And to be honest, you have a very big name recognition. And as a guy in Red Rock, you know, most of the time the people asked me, oh yeah, Ting Ting, have you ever seen like Alex Honnold? I was like, duh, okay. And then, but you are the second.
That's a kind of a scary compliment to be
scary?
Second.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because like, I don't know, I'm not on a level where I like think of myself that way, but it's I don't know. It's nice.
I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, Tintin might be the third.
Yeah, look, you can take second. I'm going to call you up every time.
Great. So I'm glad that you start teaching, like, photography workshop because I was just like, well, you know, Irene is like, most people know you as a photographer, but now you're actually still, like, guiding and teaching in a sense of, like, passing this knowledge to want to become a photographer. Yeah. So I got this excuse to interview you because I need to like relate it to like guiding and all that. So I kind of want to ask you a lot of questions starting from the photographer. So how did you get into photography?
Yeah, it started as a hobby for me. I really wanted to kind of remember that I was rock climbing because photos started for me as memories. And so I think we all relate, like one of the things that we most use on our phone is our camera. And I found that I deeply remembered things better when I had a photo of it. And I really enjoyed those. And so when I started climbing, I just started taking like a lot more photos, and then I had the opportunity at work to buy like a used camera, and I was like, let's do it.
So back then, what do you mean by work back then?
Yeah, so I moved to Vegas, and then I ended up getting a job at Cirque du Soleil as a carpenter. And so that's kind of my background, which people don't really know. But
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, I do backstage theater, kind of carpentry, rigging, electrician work. And that's what I have my degree in. And that's what I did for like most of my life until I decided to move full-time in photography.
Wow. Well, and then you say you start as an amateur photographer. Just want to document.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody picks up a camera, and
Okay.
anybody can pick up a camera. I did not know how to use it. People really like to talk at you about these things. I'm like, oh, I love aperture priority. And I'm like smiling and nodding, being like, mm-hmm. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know what aperture is. Because I never picked up a camera before. So I didn't know kind of any basis in photography. I just knew that it was interesting to hold something and then have something come out of it. And so I just Googled the manual and I read the manual, and that is how I learned how to use my first camera. Besides just being able to go out and do it. And people ask me all the time, like, how do I start? I was like, look, you just have to start. Step number 1, put whatever camera, even if it's your phone, into your bag. Because a lot of people say, like, oh, yeah, I have a camera, but I never have it in my bag. And so, like, I don't really use it. And I'm like, step 1, put it in your bag. Step 2 is actually taking it out of your bag, right? And using it that way. But I think if you're interested, you have to put the equipment in your bag to then be able to start using it. So step 1, put it in the bag. Step 2, take it out of the bag. Step 3, actually take it out of your bag and start photographing with it.
Definitely, yeah. I actually think that's a very good advice. Yeah. I mean,
sometimes you got to roll back to the very first basic step. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not get a camera, right? Or if you have
already have a camera, right?
Well, okay. Let me roll that back.
Okay.
I'm assuming that everybody has a phone. That may not be true. Whatever photographic object, tool that you have, put in your bag. Step 1. Make it simple for yourself. Once you get into the habit of starting, then you have the ability, whether you actually do it or not, to take it out when you have time.
Okay, so, and what's the, how did this transition, how long did this transition take you?
It was slow. It was like a very slow roll of starting, taking pictures, like kind of liking that, starting social media, getting positive feedback and continuing, and then just realizing that people were way more interested than I could have thought about the work that I was doing and creating, because I didn't really think a lot about it. But I think I had the rare opportunity before joining social media that I didn't have a lot of influence in that category of how things should be or what things should look like. And so I had the kind of wonderful beauty of just relying on myself, right? It was a hobby. It was not a job. I was new to something, and so I let myself be open to the process of just doing a bunch of kind of bad things before I understood not what I should be doing, but what I wanted to do. And I think that was like a huge catalyst for me. And I kind of did it part-time a lot. I kept my day job at Cirque and did it, and then kind of did it on the side. And it, when I realized it was starting to be like 50-50 for me, that 50% of my income was coming from photography, I was like, okay, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should not. And then once COVID happened and they laid everybody off, entertainment industry, you can't kind of go to big entertainment things. That's kind of whether I wanted to or not, I became full-time.
Okay, so you were already kind of thinking about it.
I was, but I had too much of the fear of leaving my consistent paying job to really do it. Yeah. So, sometimes you need that push that you did not want to do something to really make you go try and do it.
Yeah, and then you were talking about social media. I think that's an interesting topic. Mm-hmm. Way back, people were talking about, is that Alibaba lay off their athletes?
Yeah.
And then, so in the climbing community, there was obviously not the whole climbing community, but this small group of climbing community. Actually, I don't know how small, but they were talking about, whoa, come on, brand, we need to like sponsor good or cutting edge athlete, not the so-called social media influencer, as if media influencers don't contribute anything. So, and obviously, I think most people know you from social media. And what do you? What's your relationship with the social media?
I have an incredibly different, I think, thought process and relationship to social media than I think a lot of people in this business do, because that is how I quote unquote made it, right? It is a really fundamental part of my business. It's how I connect with people. It's how people find me. It's how I get business. And so, I think about it in a much less negative way than other people. And I think it's really easy to dehumanize the people who are doing things. I'm not saying that the things that we make fun of and that are wrong and bad do not exist. That is the trouble with social media. 100% they do. But I think for me, I came to it in the fact that it was a way for me to connect with community that I don't think I would have found in a smaller bubble of where I was at the time. I think it can be used to open your world to things that you have never seen before, ideas that maybe you never thought about before, and connecting with, you get to have a filter of who you get to see on your timeline, right? Not always. Like, we all have the feed, and Instagram loves to put crap in there that we don't get to see, right? That we don't want to see, we didn't get to choose to see. But I think you can really connect through it. And for me, it took away gatekeepers, right? Instead of having to push through a world that was already established, I got to be in a world where I got to do my own thing, right? I got to say what I thought was relevant, what I thought was important, and what I thought climbing photography was to me. And I didn't have to go through a number of editors in which to be able to say that I was relevant in what I was doing. And so I think because it removes barriers, I think it opens you up to a bunch of stuff that may not always be good, but it also opens you up to get past the prevalent attitudes that are there that are keeping other people back from having something to say. And so I kind of come at it through that lens of like, I think it's really important and good. And I think it's because I kind of straddle both this professional world and the social media world. I think I view it hopefully in a more positive way than I think the athletes view it. But I hear what they're saying. I don't think you need social media to be looked at by a company, right? But like, I don't think that that's right. But I think what athletes don't realize is, or maybe kind of the thing that I have discovered, is that just because you're an athlete and a professional, right, and you're doing the things that you should be doing, especially as an outdoor athlete, sometimes it doesn't make you the best ambassador, right? Where the social skills that you need or the empathy that you need is kind of lacking because of the thing that you do. It's not bad. It just requires a lot of social skills to sometimes be a brand ambassador that people are putting on you that you may not like anyways. But the thing about social media is that you can see that we're really good with communicating and talking to people. People can relate to us because we can break down the really cool things that you think we do, but in a way that is just more relatable to a person looking to get into this who is newer. And I think you need both. I think you need cutting edge athletes who are showing us what can be done in a sport, but you also need people who are incredibly relatable, who can educationally and functionally break down and realize that some people just need a few steps back from a technical mindset.
I mean, definitely though, because I think in this world should be diverse and a lot of things can coexist, right? Yeah. Just like climbing as a guide. Everybody coming with different goals. There's nothing wrong. They just want top rope all day. Yeah. Right? You never have to be a leader, so then I can get paid. Or if they want to push their grades, also fine. So I think I kind of like that attitude. Just like, come on, this world is big. We can have so many different voices.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to not think of social media as this thing that you like have to do. But like, look, I'm not saying I don't hear you. I'm just saying from a purely business standpoint, you need some commercial viability about you. That is the way that these capitalistic companies work, right? And if you don't have that, like, we would all love to just get paid to do what we want to do without having to do these things. But just like being a top athlete, that is a job. They are committed to several days, several appearances, right? They are paid to do what they do, but that doesn't come without extra stimulations that you now have obligations to this company about showing up for specific days, right? And so it's the same sort of process. Is like, if they want somebody to not be an athlete, well, then they have just more business side to somebody who has like kind of more commercial viability that they can push forward to be more of like a talking ambassador, whatever that is, right? Also, like, it's nice to view a sport not through their athletes, but through people who love to do it, because then they want to talk about it. And that makes other people excited and it incredibly relatable, right? But like, we all love something different. Some of us need to know what the cutting edge of a sport is. And some of us just want to know how we can just have more joy for it, right? Those things need to be parallel against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also when I knew about you, I noticed that a lot of your subjects are women or tend to be the so-called minority groups.
Yeah.
Did you purposely chose that as your focus?
Yeah. Mainly in the beginning, it was just like, well, these are my friends, right? These are the people that I'm hanging around. And so those were my subjects. Those were the people that I wanted to hang around. And so since I was there, I had a camera, right? And then I realized how much we had a need for it, right? Everything that I had seen was mostly, you know, let's be clear, at least in the surface, cis straight white men. And that's not what inspires me to go do stuff. You know, when I talk about my heroes, they're never people I don't know. There are always people who are so close to me, because that is what matters more. And so being able to, like, for one frame, be able to capture whatever it is that I find amazing in a human being, like, that's what inspires me. And hopefully, right, if it inspires me, then hopefully if I do a good enough job, it will translate to somebody else in that same sort of feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have one time I have a client and she is Asian and she's like totally look up to you because you show a lot of faces and make her feel like she could also do this sport and do it well. Yeah. So, like, thank you so much about that.
Of course, like, right? Classic, this is, you know, so many people have said this. This is something that we all say, but like, you can't be what you cannot see, right? If photos fundamentally did not matter to us, then why is the thing, your phone, something that everybody has, one of the most important features that continually gets updated and thought about is the camera, right? Why do, like, most of us have photographs in our house? It's not about, you know, what kind of just an image. It is about what the image means to you. And so if images meant nothing to us, then we wouldn't have an entire industry and many companies having cameras or phones or things like that. But, like, fundamentally as humans, we find this thing so important to us. And so you can't say that they don't have meaning. You just got to have, like, kind of know what subject has meaning to you.
Yeah, and then also when I saw your work on your social media and also your captions or description about your work, I think I can sense boldness. I think that's kind of the persona I kind of see you portray. Do you think this is very close to your personality, or you want to kind of make a stand, say, hey, look, we can do this?
Absolutely, always. I think boldness is so important to what I do. When I think about, right, everything that I'm doing now versus how I was before, it's a reaction to the things that I grew up with or how I was before. And right, I used to work backstage. I used to wear black. all the time. That used to be like, right, my uniform, everything you own is black. Like, I used to just be backstage, and, I was stoked about it. It's not like I didn't like that. I love that part of my life, but I kind of was like, I need to do whatever is different. I think for me, it took a really long time to gain a personality and to gain self-confidence. And when I moved 10 years ago to Las Vegas, I had decidedly made that change. Being like, I don't really know who I am. I kind of just absorb who's ever around me, and I just try to fit in. And I try to fit in so hard that it never works. And so I was like, well, who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you get to be? And so for me, right, I was like, oh, like, I don't want to be a wallflower. I don't want to wear black. Like, I want to stand out. And that is what I have to do because I've been hiding from that for so long. So it's just kind of a reaction to my younger self. It's literally playing out. When you say, like, what would you say to your younger self, right? I'm literally playing out that scenario in my life now. I don't have to be this person who, was fine, but maybe not who I super enjoyed. I get to be that person now. I get to give that advice to myself now and listen to it and live it out, hopefully.
Great. Yeah, because a lot of time when I think that sharing things on social media, there's still a little bit just like, well, do people really want to know about me? Right?
I was like, do people even read the captions? Uh-huh. I have no idea. And I think my feed has always been kind of like my brain at the time, or sharing things that I experienced, or sharing things that are going through my head at the moment. I would not say that like captions are my favorite. Like, I would just love to post my photos without any captions. But I find that, words are important for us to relate to in some way, and sharing a thought or a feeling can really kind of turn around somebody's day just to feel seen and heard themselves.
Great. And let's talk a little bit about your full-time job right now. Yeah. So, as a freelance, well, you like to think that you take photo all the time, but obviously it's not.
No.
So, can you just kind of like, so I would call you maybe like a entrepreneur. You run your own business, Lady Lockoff.
Oh gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
So, what is this time thing kind of divided up for you?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you're sitting at your computer answering emails. I always say when people are like, oh, hey, like, how do I make it as an adventure photographer? I was like, look, there are 3 ways to make it in this business. You can be an exceptional creative, right? Something that you put out there, somebody wants so much that you get paid so much money that you can pay somebody else to do the business side for you, right? Pretty rare because, art is subjective. You can be a perfectly mediocre photographer and be excellent at business and make it work because you answer your emails, right? Mm-hmm. Or you can do a little bit of both, which is, I think, the category that I fall into, where I think I'm really creative and hopefully, offer something that's a little bit different, and I happen to be good at the business side. Now, I didn't start out being good at the business side. I am a trained, theater, carpenter, rigger. And so I had to learn kind of all the business stuff as you go. And yeah, you have to be somewhat good at business if you're going to run your own business. Now, I'm not saying you have to be good at it, but you have to functionally understand and be open to the different parts of that, which is mostly just paperwork. Right?
Okay.
Can you do the paperwork? Okay, pro tip. Get a receipt app on your phone. So you can take a picture of that tiny little piece of paper that you're going to lose. Just so you have a paper trail for the IRS to show that, like, hey, this is a receipt. This is the trip I went on. This is the food that I ate, or whatever it is. Yeah.
And so what's the biggest lesson that you learned from, like, creating your own business? Did you, like, now you made it, say, okay.
Yet to be seen.
In the quotes,
yeah.
air quotes,
yeah.
in podcast, that would you have something that you wish that when you just started, any advice you want to tell the person who just started, the Lady Lockoff photography?
Look, yeah, everybody wants a roadmap. And I I think if I told you every single step that I did, you wouldn't do it because it would be so overwhelming. There are just some things that you have to start and make it through, because if you knew what was ahead of you, you would never do it. And I think that's the thing, is like, I know that we all want answers, but I think when you run your own business, you need to push through without those answers. You'll get them, but part of it is just simply starting it and seeing it through.
It's kind of interesting though, because this advice I gave a lot of people when they were saying that, oh, I really want to do this particular climbing project, a long route, right? And obviously, I teach them the basic, the fundamentals, right? Obviously, if you, as a photographer, you need to learn the fundamental. But then you just have to do it. And then you might not succeed the first time, but you learn something, and then you keep at it, you probably succeed. Starting
is always the hardest part. If you just figure out whatever you need to start something, once you're in it, the momentum starts. Momentum is real. But starting is always the hardest part, because, like, I know me, I am an overthinker, and I will overthink myself into an overwhelming situation that I will never start.
Right. And then the reason I want to talk about this business side is, I think as a guide, because the federal government require that we always be an employee of the company. Okay. So all the complex thing, let's put it aside, those paperwork thing. But the thing I think fundamental for a guide to succeed is you have to run. Even you're working for other company, you have to run it like it's your own business.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Yeah. So that's why I'm like curious about, like, probably we can find something similar about you as a business, and then like guiding as a business.
You got to carve out that time, right? When you're like, oh, I love to just, you have to be serious about, like, okay, because I know that you have to write reports when you're done about how your day went. Right? You need to carve out that time and be like, this is my business time, whatever it is. Here's the time that I have to do for this paperwork. And when you make it like, this is what I need to do, then unfortunately, right, you have to categorize it as work. And so then you need to separate, this is my work time versus this is my time that I'm not working, whatever you want to do in that space. But I think the more that you can separate it into its own workspace, and the tasks that you need to complete as a guide as a workspace, then I think you can focus more on what needs to be done and kind of what no longer is on your time. Because I think it's really, especially, right, an adventure, whatever, can really easily flow into other places. Last year I had my busiest year. And when you're a freelancer, whatever, right, like, we're like, oh, I stopped working at 5 every day. Let me tell you, when you're on a production, everybody's emailing at like 8 to midnight. And then like at 6 a.m. you wake up and now the plan has changed again, right? And so I don't ever try to like work a 9 to 5. I know that that's not going to work for me, but I'm like, cool. I'm not going to feel bad about having a very low work month, because I just worked 40 days straight, where I just shoved all the weekends that regular people would have, and I just shoved it into the other part of the year. And so I'm not going to feel kind of bad about the downtime that I have, because when I'm working, I am probably working 24/7 for like a week straight. And so you have to challenge yourself to think differently than, right, I came from like a corporate job where I had like essentially a 9 to 5, even though when you're in theater, it's an evening, right? So it's 3 to 11. But I really had to start kind of being like, okay, this is not going to look like the standard way that I've worked in a regular job before, but I still need to treat it like that, but think about the scheduling in a different way. The best part about working for yourself, ting ting, is that when I hit a wall at 3 o'clock, I'm like, I'm not going to sit and pretend to work for the next 2 hours. I think I'm just going to stop. And that was a really hard transition for me to be like, oh, look, well, okay, look at that. Like, I'm going to go outside and like get into the sun for a little bit. And that significantly helps, because I think I'm more productive that way. But right, that's the incredible privilege of being able to work for yourself, is that you don't have somebody else's time clock on you.
Nice. And among all your, say, the production work, I know some of your work because I've seen your work in magazines, and then and I've seen you show up when there's some climbing program to take photography. And what other production work? Anything that I kind of out of my imagination? Anything kind of like interesting? I don't even know that I need a photographer for.
I mean, my favorite job is when somebody just hands me a pile of money and I get to decide what to do with it. I think jobs that are harder is when you have like more people looking over your shoulder and dictating what you're doing. But when people get to like, when I get to make my choices, that's what it is. But really, for adventure photography, what I kind of sell and what I'm really good at is being everything in-house, right? So like, people hand me a pile of money, but that means now I'm the producer. Now that means now I'm the talent scout. That means now I'm the production manager, right? And so all the photography is like such a small part of that, but I'm doing all the pre-planning before. And so, yeah.
So you're your own project manager.
Yeah, I'm my own project manager. And sometimes I've been a local fixer for productions that come into Vegas that kind of want to do rock climbing but don't know the areas or don't know the permitting system. And so sometimes I'm hired for that. And then sometimes I just sell straight up photos, which, is awesome. That's what I'd rather be doing, but there's not a lot of money in that.
I see. And how did you start to teach your climbing? What's that called? Climbing photography
clinic.
Clinic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I started to teach because, climbing photography, there's no standardization, right? The AMGA has sort of standardized the beginning concepts and techniques of rock climbing, right? Because it's been around for a while. So it may not standardize them, but it puts them into a path. For rock climbing photography, nobody has a path. There's no one way to do it. Everybody has their setups depending on their technical abilities of how far they've gone into rock climbing. And so when I learned, I used a bunch of equipment and gear that I thrown out since then. Don't need that, right? There's no standard way. And so I think that can be confusing for people. And so I found out a way that works really well for me that I find when I teach to other people also works for them, especially when they're beginning and they don't have the technical thought process of we're doing a multi-pitch, right? Let's start on single pitch sport. That's mostly what I teach in my clinic. And so, yeah, I just wanted to give people a way, because so many people were asking me, oh, how do you do this system? Or how do you do that? Or and then I realized that a lot of people were giving me information that was not important to what I did. And so, number one for me when I teach is look, right? The AMGA has 3 different ways in which you can do something, right? Good, better, and best. All of these 3 things are safe and functional to use, but somebody has an opinion about which of those 3 things is better, right? And that's a lot of rock climbing, oh, I do this instead of this. But sure, I want to save a second of my time, but as a non-speed climber who likes to climb mellow things all day, who cares? It doesn't matter. I don't need to save a second. I will take the 2 seconds and do it my way. And so it was just getting people to realize that this convoluted system that rock climbers were teaching them were not actually functional to climbing photography. And the number one thing that I teach is you got to separate the 2. Sure, we take and borrow things from rock climbing and big wall climbing and aid climbing, but are we doing those things? No. So when I think about things, I'm does it fall under, right, the triangle of comfort, cost, and weight? Right? So sure, I want to be more comfortable, so I'm going to bring a pulley in my system. Costs me more money, it's a little bit more weight, but it brings me much more comfort. But an aid ladder, sure, it's cheap, right? But it's gonna get stuck on everything. And am I aid climbing? No. Do I need that? No. right? And so I always try to make people, I don't tell them what to do. I teach them the fundamentals of what they're trying to think about to be comfortable on the wall. And if that expense is right for them, if that level of comfort is right for them, and if that weight that they have to carry is correct for them. And again, right, it's going back to trying to teach in a way that was different than what I was taught, right? I don't like when people didn't give me the space to work through a new concept in my mind and just told me what to do. And it's just, right, it's a thing of being a woman of color and just smiling and nodding when clearly you have no idea what's going on, but you cannot show that you don't know. I hate that because you can see it. I can see it in students' eyes when they're just like, and I'm like, that's cool. Let me take the time to back it up so you don't leave here trying to Google stuff after, but you actually get to learn in the moment whatever you were confused by, right? We all learn at different paces, and being a good teacher, right, in smaller settings, right, when you only have about 6 people, but understanding how somebody needs to learn and giving them the space to do that is wonderful. Like, I was always like, have you ever, right, I'm sure you've experienced this as a guide, right? Have you ever had somebody just be so happy because they got to learn something and then truly figure out what they came to learn? There's no better feeling than that, especially with a woman of color.
I mean, definitely, right? I talk to many guys, and that's usually what they love about guiding. It's just like, I helped this person accomplish what they wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, that's right. I just want to teach you what you came here to be taught. I don't want to talk at you and tell you a bunch of crap that's not relevant to the thing you came to learn. But I think it's that support. All they needed was support, right? I always ask people right before when we start the gear talk of the second day of right, raise your hand if the technical aspects of this are scary to you. And sometimes you have one, sometimes you have a few, right? But I was like, look, technical things are just technical. They can all be taught. You just need to understand what works for you and go at your own speed and pace, right? Creativity, that's not so easy to teach, right? So throw that out and just here is the minimal gear you need to do, right? And to understand. And once you have your hands on it, once you are taught about how everything works, once you are actually able to use the gear, and then once you are actually able to ascend and descend, you're like, oh, that wasn't that much, right? But really stepping up the process in a way that's functional to people is the most important to me. You can't just tell them how to rock climb, right? You got to teach them how to tie in first. You got to maybe have them understand what's about to happen and what's in front of them, right? I've been in, we've all been in situations where we're just like, just climb. And you're like, okay. But what would have been more helpful? Oh, hey, you see that thing to your left? And then you see that foot down below you? You're going to put your foot on that and push your momentum into getting the thing that you want, rather than just being like, what can I grab, right? There's nothing wrong with deeply understanding something, but it doesn't have to be hard and difficult as long as the teacher who's teaching you is teaching it in a step thought process that makes sense to you.
And I'm curious that for your climbing photography workshop, what are your target people? Are they already know how to take photo, but then they just need to know the technical stuff? Or are they climbers and then they want to learn photography? Vertically or both?
Yeah, I take everybody. So the minimum requirement is that you have something that you can take photos with and you know how to use it. Because in this course, we don't really have time to teach you how to use a camera, right? And so however you use your camera, that's all I care about. I am all about providing the gear so people can see the different things. Oh, hey, you already own this. You don't need to buy it. Or oh, hey, you're willing to spend some money and you hate the thing that you have. Here's one thing that will work for you and is probably within a price range that makes sense to you, right? Because there are 3 different things you can attach your ascender with. Mm-hmm. And it's if you already own it, then it's free and we're good with it. Or here's something that you could find that you like in the systems that you have.
And the reason I ask is I'm curious that, say, for example, I've been in one of your workshops as helper.
Yeah.
And then obviously the technical system I already know, all the technical system, jogging and everything. and I know how to take photo with my phone.
Yeah.
So say if I participate in your workshop, what do you expect me to get out of that?
Yeah. So we get everybody up into the air. Minimally, that's easy. Get everybody up into the air. But for me, I have, it's a day and a half because it's so important to get people up into the air, but tell them what to do once they're there. I really hate people like, oh, can you teach this part, or can you teach it during a festival? And I'm like, no, because it's a disservice to teach somebody how to ascend, but not tell them what to do up there. Or it's like, it's just as bad to tell them what they're looking for in rock climbing photography, but not actually tell them how to get up there. And so I really try to mix the two, because I think with photographers, you are both. And so it's important to learn both. And so I can get anybody up into the air. Awesome. And so hopefully you can learn some tips and tricks for yourself. And I'm going to tell you, I'm air quotes here since we're on a podcast, like the rules, what we all generally understand as good photography. But I always emphasize that it's about knowing and understanding those rules. And then true creativity and self-expression comes when you can figure out how to bend and break those rules for you.
Great. And then maybe I'll take this opportunity. So say as a guide, me. And obviously my first priority is risk management, right?
Of course.
And then and a lot of time I have to belay, right? On a multi-pitch situation, I have to belay. Sometimes I don't have belay on a single pitch setting, so I can set up fixed line and take photo a lot easier. But then when I'm like fixed, so on the multi-pitch setting, I have to be attached to anchor. I only have this angle, right? I do have a font. What are the tips like for me to like create good photos for them to have a good memory?
Yeah. So number one, instead of pointing your phone straight down, right? You want to tilt it. I'm trying to think about how to explain this since we don't have any visuals here. You want to always tilt your phone back, right? So if you think about when you have your phone straight up and down over your climber, their head, their body, everything is in line. So they look like a dot, right? But the minute that you tilt your phone forward or backwards, right? Now that line of the body starts to become a line instead of a dot. Right? And so always don't ever go right over top somebody's head. Try to bring your phone in or to the back of them if you can. And P.S. always tether your phone. Always get some sort of harness for your phone so you don't drop it. That's like the number one rule in climbing photography, is that everything needs to be attached to you. Do not drop it, because it's not good for you. It's not good for somebody else. It's not good for your budget, because you're going to have to buy a new phone every time.
Yeah, I do have a tether for my phone. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. It's like, so the tether is, say, a foot long.
Yeah.
Say, and then I'm attached. I can't shift left and right. Right. I could.
So you're going to use everything out of that tether to move your phone around as much as you can. So like, your tether can't be long because then it's going to get stuck on stuff.
Definitely.
But honestly, if you need to do it, especially if you have new folks, they would be stoked to stop and let you get your bearings, right? If you need to tie them off at your belay anchor, remember and remind them to be like, hey, this looks like a great photo. Can you stop there? All right, look at here, right? Sometimes you need to give direction to folks, especially when they're doing something new, because they're not going to remember or pay attention to it, right? When I am photographing an event, my number one job is to make sure we have a group photo. That is my job to remember. Nobody else is going to remember. Everybody's going to forget. But minimally, it is my job to remember that. And so when you have new folks, probably, unless maybe you get the vibe that they just really want to climb, they're going to want photos. And so having them take an opportunity to stop so you can get yourself safe and them safe and then take the photo, nobody is ever going to be mad about that. So if you have an opportunity, take the opportunity to take a photo of them.
And then usually another thing that I heard from other photographers, wall climbing photographers, like, well, you probably want to wait until they are.
Yeah, they have to be in range, right?
Right?
Think about the scale of the person in that photo. generally, right, you need to choose. What do you care about? Do you care about the background? Do you care about the climber? Or do you care about the climb? Because the scale of that person in those three scenarios is gonna matter, right? If you care about the person, wait till they are probably at your feet, right? And they're gonna take up more than half of the frame of the photograph. If you're doing a multi-pitch and you want to get them a cool photo, what matters more? The height, right? The height of where you are. So they're going to be really small. So think about how big or small that person is in your photograph. Ideally, if you can get them in one scenario where they're close up, right? At the anchor, woo, we made it. And then like, oh, wow, you went 3 pitches up. Like, look how high we are. That's a well-rounded thought process of somebody who's got photos of themselves and then of what they did.
And do you usually do a little touch-up afterwards?
I always edit my photos. I think as a photographer, I say taking a photo in the moment, that's like making a sketch. But like, right, taking that photo and putting it into the computer and editing it, then you are now painting on top of that sketch. It's just a beginning point for me. It's never the end point. For more guides, right, you have your phone. You can only do so much in the moment. Maybe you don't want to do any more work and edit the photos. That's fine, right? So using that brightness slider on your phone can be really important, because if the brightness isn't right, you're just going to get somebody essentially in silhouette smiling up at you and a bright desert background. So use that slider on your phone to adjust as much as you can when you take the photo, so then you don't have to do anything afterwards. If you really want to like really, get those people excited about what you do, right? We talked about that whatever work time that you have to like write your thing. Edit 2-3 photos, which Snapseed is like Google's photo editor on your phone. You want to step up your photography game, edit your photos, right? We're just talking contrast, brightness, shadow, a little saturation, right? It's all the things that are on your phone editing app. Just pick 1 or 2, give them a little like finesse, and then that'll make those photos inherently better, right? Already better. But like that takes time. So is it worth your time? Is it worth your client care to do that? May not be. You may like that. So that's kind of up to you.
And sometimes I found the cropping actually does wonder.
Oh yeah, just crop it. Okay, post-crop rotation. If something's looking a little bit funny, 100%, if you start to rotate it around, might look better.
180 maybe?
Just keep hitting the rotate 90 degrees.
Okay.
A lot of times what happens with people's photos, especially when they take them from above, gravity's looking a little funky, right? But the minute that you turn it around 180, you're like, oh well, that fixed everything. Don't ever forget if something's looking a little bit weird. Rotate it 90, 90, 90, 90, right? And see if maybe the rotation fixes everything. A lot of times, sometimes it does.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I guess, it also takes some forethought. If that's kind of like part of your client care, it's just like, okay, what's the subject? Just like you said, multi-pitch, the long, high, and or the action person.
If somebody isn't into leading and they're just into following, they're probably newer. And, right? It's like the same thing, like reminding your client to take a look behind them when you're at whatever top pitch that you got. Right? To be like, look where you've made it. This is a point that you've probably never been up here before, or you have, and this is why you're hiring me, because you want to see it again. Right? Taking that moment to remind them to look at like where they have gotten is amazing. And then being able to remember that with a photograph, you couldn't really ask for more. I would say most people want photos from their day out of guiding. So here, you want a thought process, you need to give them 3 photos. You need to give them 1 group photo or of themselves, right, at the bottom of the crag. And then the next 2 should be climbing photos, right? Them on the wall or the height and scale that they reached of wherever you're doing. Like 3 photos. That's, if you don't want to overwhelm yourself because you have so much to do as a guide, which is real, 3 photos. 1 group photo, right, on the ground. Or if it's 1 person, it's a portrait, right? Or do a selfie. You're their guide. They probably already love you. You might as well brand yourself that way, right? And then 2 climbing photos. 1 where they're up close to be like, look, I'm rock climbing. And 1 where be like, oh, look where I'm rock climbing. That's That's your sweet spot. 3 photos, more to do, yes, but doable. And if you have that as a list, then you can just go through that and check it in your head, just like your list of safety.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. And I think if after just like you start and then after you do a few times, probably it's going to take
It's all getting into the habit of something, right? It always takes a few times, right? To get like your climbing shoes in your bag. How many times you forget your climbing shoes when you're new? So many, right? But it's just getting the habit to be like, cool, right? Beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day. 1 photo, 2 photo, 3 photos. Just get it into your habit and figure out what is right for you as a guide for how much you want to give.
And have you ever met anybody who doesn't want their photo taken?
Yeah, I've met a few, right?
Okay.
To me, consent is very important, right? If you're going to be in my work, I want to ask you and I want to make sure that you want to be there, because I think, especially with folks of color, we've had so many people just invade our personal space in a way and use us in things that we didn't agree to because somebody's got a long lens and you have no idea. And so, yeah, right? Consent is very important to like what I do. Ask him in the beginning, hey, are you cool with photos? Right? I say communication is hard, but if you just point to your camera, people are like, yes. But right, there are some climbers who are very into what they're doing, and me being there disrupts their experience of whatever climbing is, and I'm always respectful of backing away, right? I always ask, it's okay if you snap a few photos because like something was just right. Then go up and ask. Minimally, that's what you need to do.
Yeah, and then so in the conversation we just had, then you mentioned a few times, women of color, or we both are women of color. So you have like some barriers that you will have to punch through.
Yeah.
Can you give me like some specific example of like things that you have punched through, and any like advice for people? Because I've been asked advice just like, I'm a small Asian woman. Nobody take me serious, that type of thing. Like any useful advice?
Yeah,
for them?
it shouldn't be this way, but it is. I need to be extra assertive in some situations, especially when it comes to technical material. I usually don't let people talk over me when I have that situation. Any time that I teach my clinic and I get assigned a guide who I don't know, or, who is a man, I usually call them beforehand, right? Pre-doing this talk to be like, hey, just so you know, this is my clinic. This is what I'm going to teach. Happy to share the plan with you, but I want you to know that I need you to direct folks to me, right? Hopefully this has been changing, but right, we are hardwired to always look to a certain type of person who we think has knowledge and power. And a lot of the times I have to remind myself too, to redirect that thought process to somebody who actually has that knowledge and power, who is not the person that they think of. And I think when we talk about allyship, especially with white men, it's like, you don't need, like, sure, you may have the answer, but if you know that somebody else has the answer and are being deliberately ignored, perhaps you should direct that person to that person. It's not about not knowing. It's about understanding that we can all share this knowledge and everybody has knowledge, and redirecting somebody's focus away from who they assume has the knowledge to who actually has the knowledge can be really important. For me, I make deliberate choices that sometimes I need to be extra assertive, which sucks, right? Because you ride the line of being called, aggressive, right? In that situation of being assertive, to be like, hi, everybody, here is our plan for the day, right? And I find that when I lay out the plan, I communicate to people that I have knowledge and I have forethought about what's coming, because people assume that for some reason you haven't deeply thought about the technical information about what you're going to give, right? And so it sucks. And I'm hoping this will change. But yeah, to come in with confidence, to come in with probably being a little bit more assertive than you would ever in your daily life, but knowing that that is a space where you need to have that, so people will hopefully, not always, like, choose to listen to you and to what you have to say.
Great. Yeah. Well, confidence is a hard part.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
My first clinic, I was like, who am I to be teaching this? I'm so scared. 15 minutes in, I was like, oh crap, I really do know what I'm talking about. Who'd have thought, right? Now, I think I counted this year, 26 clinics later, you cannot talk over me. I will not let you. I know this material. I know this material is good. And I know that I've thought deeply about the way that I teach it so it is most functional for people to learn.
So how often do you teach climbing photographer clinic?
Yeah, I teach about 6 a year.
6 a year at different locations?
Yeah, 2 in Vegas and then 2 in several other locations. And then 2 to 3 for organizations, especially for folks of color. I know that my clinics are expensive, and I completely understand that, like, money is always a barrier to anybody. And so I try to plug in with local organizations that I'm like, what does your community need? I am happy to bring my material to you, but I need you to dictate whatever your community needs, whether it's pricing or venue. Do we need to do it in a gym because people can't make it out to an outdoor space, right? And so it's all about partnering with the local folks of color and meeting their community needs, not meeting my needs.
And so for folks who want to sign up, do you put it on your website and Instagram maybe?
Yes, usually I announce it on my Instagram, but always on my website. It's ladylockoff.com/clinics. You can find the information about what I teach there, pricing, and then the dates. Dates have yet to be put out for 2024, but they will hopefully be up there sometime at the end of December.
And do you find that sometimes you have that schedule and then probably will conflict with like people who want you to do some sort of...
Oh, I'm terrified of it all the time.
Okay.
But right, that's business.
Right.
You schedule something, that is now a work thing that you have scheduled. And if people really want you, they will schedule around it. That's just, when you're freelance, that's how it goes. Like, very few times have I had to give up a job, but that happens. But the great thing about me is that when people come to me, they want me, and I'm like, look, I'm already working. If you want me, right, you can go to somebody else, but like, you're never going to get me. And so you can do it the next weekend. So yeah, it's scary to pre-plan so hard, but that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do in business. Like, I'm sorry that you couldn't plan, but I had to plan. And so sometimes you just need to move forward.
And I asked these 2 questions for all my interviewee. Mm-hmm. And the first question, they are big questions, but I want you to answer quick. Okay. Not give it too much thought.
Okay.
So the first thing is, if you look back your career, what's the proudest moment?
The Nat Geo job I got in Smith Rock.
Wow.
Yeah.
It didn't take you too long.
No, because people ask you these things all the time. Okay. Like, you have to know. And, like, off the top of my head.
And why is that?
Yeah, because it was an all-female team. All-female adventure rock climbing team. We all got paid really well, which, number one, money motivates me. It just does. Right? We got paid really well. I got to house everybody. I got to pay to fly them in. I got to work with people that I wanted to work with. And I knew that I wanted, we were all women of color except for my assistant. And like, what a rare, like, that's terrible, but what a rare, wonderful moment for people to be able to support each other. And that's probably some of the best artistic work that I got out of it, because I was in a situation that I loved. I got to hire who I loved, and the work that came out was something that I could be really proud of.
And can people still see it somewhere?
Oh yeah, I think if you Google like Nat Geo Hydro Flask Irene or Lady Lockoff, you'll come across it. I'm really proud of those photos because I worked really hard for them, meaning I went a week beforehand. I walked every approach in Smith Rock and timed it to not, mountain project time, but Irene walking time, which is much slower. And so, yeah, and I felt like the amount of work that I put in, was lovely to see that the work that was created from it showed it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And how about, say, if the listeners of this episode can only take one thing away from the episode, what do you wish them take away?
Yeah, be stronger.
Be
Right?
stronger.
Be stronger, be more confident. I think we're all riddled with doubt. And you don't know what your doubts are until you try something. And you don't know that you can get past them until you try. Which I hate when you're just like, just try, just start. Right? But I hope you come away with a small sense that you can do it. Right? Own speed and pace. Work at your own speed and pace. Figure out what your basic needs are to complete something. Meet them, and then maybe you can actually complete the thing that you set towards yourself.
Awesome. And, I want to chit-chat a little
Yeah.
bit. So we're in Las Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got asked all the time.
Yeah.
So I have no problem when people ask me where to climb, what climbs are good, right? But then a lot of people come to Vegas. It's a combined thing that they want to climb. And they also want to do other things. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I have no idea like which show to recommend to them. And I have some restaurants I like, but there's so many restaurants. Like, usually if people say, hey, Irene, in Vegas, what are the restaurants?
Oh, yeah. People don't even ask me what to climb anymore. They're just like, where should we eat?
I mean, it's important, though. I mean, compared to a lot of other climbing areas, that you have camp, and then you're away from big cities, near a small town, then you really don't have that many choices.
Yeah.
And here, people just like, yeah, babe, I'm in Vegas, right? The best climbing area. Well, I won't, maybe the best.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Well, everybody has their opinion, right? And
Right.
just take your opinion.
And then obviously, everybody have different tastes, right? About like restaurants, obviously. But what are your favorites?
Yeah, if you're a climber, you're going to want a lot of food. You should go to an all-you-can-eat sushi place.
All-you-can-eat, yes.
That's my favorite combo, right? Is an all-day multi-pitch followed by all-you-can-eat sushi. It gives you a goal all day, right? Are you one of those people, Ting Ting? Literally, when we're hiking on the approach pitch, I'm like, what's for dinner? Like, I need to know what I'm looking forward to get out of whatever situation we're in at the end. So, Vegas is like an all-you-can-eat sushi place. Be prepared to eat. There are many different places in town. My favorite is Goemon on Decatur.
It's pretty close here.
Yeah, it's pretty close. But I always ask people, like, what's your food things? Because some people have special, dietary requirements or restrictions. If you have a large group of people that's, like 5+ or more, Cornish Pasty House, they have vegan. I think the only thing that they don't do is gluten-free, but they have vegan, vegetarian options, and they can take groups of 15, right?
15.
Groups of 20.
Okay.
Yeah, when you have just a lot of folks, that's where you want to go.
And how about, let's see, I mean, all the restaurants I recommend are Asian food.
Well, that's because the Asian food here is amazing. And
It
so
is.
usually that's where I direct folks.
Great.
Yeah.
Like sushi.
Yeah.
And then,
Sushi noodles. The noodles here are
Okay.
so good.
Cool. Yeah. And then what others say, rest day activities.
Yeah. Pinball Hall of Fame, right? It's cheap. It's free parking, right? You can spend anywhere from $2 to like $40, depending on how much pinball you want to play. But that's always a good day. It's really easily accessible. It's close to the airport. Yeah, I mean, Vegas is nothing but a playground of stuff to do. It's nice to hear that people want to do things outside of climbing, because I always encourage that, right? When we went to China, everybody wanted to do is climb, but I kind of forced them initially, which they did love, right, to take 2 days, right? One before and after, 2 days, to go do things in China. Because I was like, we are essentially, we flew halfway across the world to do the same thing that we do in Utah. So, like, I need to feel like I'm in a different place, which is meaning to experience the place, right? And so I always encourage people, you have a rest day. I get it. People come in here for a short time. They want to climb every day. But minimally you can do is experience the place where you're at, because that is the difference, right? You climb every day. But here, like, experience the things. You're in Vegas, not my favorite, but, like, experience the Vegas things. There are definitely clubs. There are wonderful places to eat. Great coffee shops. You can rent dune buggies or paddle boards, right? Just whatever it is, do it. But I like the Pinball Hall of Fame. Really low stress. Easy to spend an hour there if that's all you want to do.
Okay, I might try.
Yeah, Google it.
I've never
Google,
been
oh
there.
my gosh, pinball is so fun. They have vintage machines, which are like a quarter, because they're really hard to play and you'll lose that ball really fast, to the fancier machines. The Pinball Hall of Fame is not just a look. It is a warehouse full of pinball machines which you can play. So.
And originally you said you moved to Vegas because of job, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you like it here?
I mean, I've stayed here for 10 years, so that should say something. People ask me all the time. I love Vegas. I really like that I settled here. I think I came from the East Coast. It was cold. And just because I grew up there does not mean that I thrive in that environment. I thrive like a flower that needs the sunshine all of the time. So, Vegas is awesome because within 8 hours, right? Number one, you have to have a car when you live here. Like, this is not a walking city, so you have to have a car. But once you have a car, 8 hours, Salt Lake, Flagstaff, Sedona, Bishop, Yosemite, Moab, Indian Creek, Maple Canyon, right? So many things within an 8-hour radius that if this city gets to you, which it does, you can leave, right? You have, hopefully, there's so many other places where you can just go camp for a night. Nevada has great things which you can do to get away from the city so quick.
Yeah, I mean, Nevada has a lot of public lands.
Yeah. The only thing that I think Vegas does not offer is that small town vibe of like coming out your front door and walking to the coffee shop. That just doesn't happen here, which is important to some people and I really truly do miss. It's very suburbia, but like other than that, I think there's not a lot of drawbacks.
I mean, I don't know because my husband is a Caucasian, you know, and we were talking about probably settle in some sort of mountain town.
Yeah.
But I couldn't take it. It's not diverse enough for me. You know, I need the Asian food.
Yeah.
I need an airport that I can go back to my
major international airport. I mean, this was pre-COVID, but I flew to China for $550 round trip. My gosh.
I don't know whether you can get it.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that anymore, but I was
mm-hmm.
like, right? And just having access. I mean, I travel so much. I mostly drive, but having access to an airport is important. So.
Great. Wow, it was so fun talking with you. Yeah, thank you for being on this show. Yeah, so the last thing. Yeah. Okay. So, well, obviously, Lady Lockoff at Instagram or Lady Lockoff photography.
Yeah, if you type in Lady Lockoff, I have all of the socials and you can find me from there.
Okay, so that will be the primary way to find you. Great. And any other thing that you want to plug out there?
No.
Great.
No. I think I already did that. I did my plug a little bit earlier. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks.
Definitely.